Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Travel Secrets with TV's Dave Galvin. I'm Dave, and today I want to talk about something that sounds simple on the surface but can completely change the way you travel. Today's episode is called The Best Travel Advice I Ever Got. Now, over the years, I've talked to a lot of travelers. I've talked to cruise ship veterans and those who have sailed hundreds of times, backpackers who've crossed continents with a single bag, travelers who save all year for that one special trip. And somewhere along the way, I picked up a handful of pieces of travel advice that really stuck with me. Not the obvious stuff like bring sunscreen or don't forget your passport. You know, those are important, but they're not life-changing. Unless you forget your passport, then you're pretty much screwed. Now, I'm talking about the advice that actually changes the way you experience the world. And the single best piece of travel advice I ever got was this: don't try to see everything. Now, when you first hear this, it almost sounds wrong. Most people travel with the exact opposite mindset. They want to see everything. They want to pack every landmark, every museum, every famous street, every restaurant into a few days. But here's the problem. When you try to see everything, you end up experiencing almost nothing. You spend your entire trip racing from point A to point B. You're checking boxes instead of actually enjoying where you are. You're worried about what's next instead of appreciating what's in front of you. A few years ago, I was talking to a traveler who had just returned from Europe. This person visited 6 countries in 9 days. 6 countries. Now, on paper, that does sound quite impressive, but when I asked them about the trip, the response was like, well, we saw the Eiffel Tower for about 15 minutes, then we had to go get the train, then we were in Rome for a day, but we mostly just stood in line, then we rushed through a museum in Florence. And you could tell they were exhausted just talking about it. That's when I realized something. Travel isn't a competition. There's no prize for visiting the most countries or seeing the most landmarks. Nobody's handing out trophies at the airport. The real magic of travel happens when you slow down. When you sit down at the cafe and kind of watch the world go by, when you wander down a street that isn't in the guidebook, when you spend enough time in a place to notice the tiny little details. That's when a destination stops being a tourist attraction and starts to feel actually real. Another piece of travel advice that stuck with me is something a seasoned traveler once told me on a cruise ship. She said, the best part of any trip is the time you didn't plan. And that is so true. Think about that. Most people plan their trips down to the minute. They have spreadsheets, reservations, schedules, alarms. You know, planning can be great. Planning helps you avoid missing the big things you really want to see. But if your entire trip is scheduled, you leave no room for discovery. Some of the best travel moments happen completely by accident. You stumble into a restaurant because it smells amazing. You start talking to a local who gives you a recommendation that isn't in any travel guide. Or you take a wrong turn and suddenly find yourself somewhere incredible. Those moments cannot be scheduled. Another piece of travel advice I once heard was this: travel light. Okay, that sounds like basic advice, but it's deeper than it seems. People pack their fears when they travel. They bring clothes for every possible scenario. They bring things just in case. They pack like they're preparing for an expedition across Antarctica, and then they spend the entire trip dragging every luggage through airports, train stations, taxis, and hotel lobbies. Now, here's the truth. You almost never use half the things you pack, and the freedom of traveling light is incredible. You move easier, you stress less, you feel more flexible. It's also generally less expensive because you don't have to check your luggage in at the airport. Experienced travelers know something beginners often learn the hard way. You don't need more stuff. You need less stuff and more experiences. Another great piece of travel advice I heard once was, expect things to go wrong. Okay, this sounds like a negative, but it's actually one of the healthiest travel mindsets you can have. Flights are going to get delayed, weather changes, restaurants close, plans fall apart. You know, it happens. And if you expect everything to go perfectly, those moments will ruin your trip. But if you expect a little chaos, something interesting happens. You become flexible. You adapt. Sometimes those unexpected moments end up becoming the most memorable parts of the trip. Maybe your flight delay leads to an unexpected overnight in a city you never planned to visit. Maybe a canceled tour forces you to explore somewhere on your own. Travel has a way of rewarding people who stay flexible. Okay, so one of the greatest moments of travel for me, my wife and I decided to just give it a try. We walked across the border from San Diego into Tijuana. We had a blast, by the way. We start to come back. We're standing in line at the border and we're going through security, and security runs my passport. And then they tell me that I happen to have the name of somebody that's wanted by the feds. They were really cool about it. They were like, look, we don't think you're the guy, but we have to convince the computer you're not the guy. So they end up putting me in a little room for 30 minutes while they escort my wife to the American side of the border. She's laughing at first, but after like 20 minutes, she's freaking out thinking, oh my God, they arrested my husband at Border Patrol. Then all they had to do was fingerprint me and run it through the computer, and that convinced the computer that I wasn't the guy they were looking for. I mean, come on, I was wearing a Batman t-shirt and Birkenstocks. I'm probably not the guy. But once they fingerprinted me, it was all said and done. They were pretty happy about not having to arrest me at that moment. But that was one of the greatest stories that I've ever had while traveling. Another piece of travel advice that really stuck with me is talk to people. This might be the most underrated travel advice there is. Most travelers stay inside a little bubble. They interact with hotel staff, tour guides, and waiters, but they rarely connect with locals in a meaningful way. But when you talk to people, everything changes. You start to see a destination through the eyes of someone else, someone who probably actually lives there. You hear stories you'd never hear otherwise. You discover places tourists rarely go. And sometimes you end up making connections that stay with you after the trip ends. Sometimes you make friends with someone that you might not ever see again. You're just friends with them on social media, and you will chit-chat about your mutual travels with each other. You know, travel isn't just about places, it's about the people. And the more you talk to people, the richer your travel experiences are going to become. It's absolutely fantastic, and probably one reason why I enjoy cruising so much is you meet people from around the globe. Not just the travelers themselves, but the staff, of course. The staff's from all over the place, and you can actually sit and chit-chat about life where they are. And you think to yourself, someday I'm going to go to your home country and meet your family. And it's really just a very innocent thought, and we all have a good chuckle about it. But here's the last thing that's probably the most important part of travel, and that is don't wait. A lot of people spend years saying things like, someday I'm going to go there. Someday I'm going to visit Europe. Someday I'll take that cruise. Someday I'll go to Antarctica. I'll see the place I've always dreamed about. Someday will very easily turn into never. Life gets busy. Responsibilities pile up. Time passes faster than we expected it to. And the truth is, the perfect moment to travel rarely appears. Sometimes you just have to decide to go. Just take that trip, see the place, have the experience, because at the end of the day, travel isn't just about destinations. It's about the memories you create, the perspectives you gain, and the stories you bring back. Those things stay with you. So if you had to summarize the best travel advice I ever got, it would look something like this. Don't try to see everything. Leave room for the unexpected. Travel light. Expect things to go wrong. Talk to people. And don't wait too long to go, because the world is an incredible place. There's something powerful about stepping outside your everyday life and seeing it. And I'm just excited because I'm going to Europe for the first time in about a month. I can't wait to talk to you about it. That's it for today's episode of Travel Secrets with TV's Dave Galvin. Look, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, share it with the world who loves travel, and just keep exploring. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you Thursday.